Hello, Internet! Welcome to episode 228 of the Assorted Calibers podcast, the second Internet podcast. There's a little bit for everyone. I'm Weer'd. With me tonight is the loveliest, bestest, the hostess with the mostest, Aaron Paulette. How are you doing, Aaron?
What is the mostest that I have?
All of the things. Mostly awesome. I think it's mostly awesome.
Okay. Well, I made it through the insanity of, after Thanksgiving and the whole let's decorate the house, and I've got almost all of my Christmas shopping done. I've still got to schlep down to the post office, but I'm basically done. And we've got the house decorated, and I think Mom has finished her baking, and the tree is up, and the decorations are up. And so for the most part, we are over the hump, and now it's just, all downhill, and we can enjoy Christmas. So that's good.
We did that too. This weekend was put up the tree and get out all the decorations and all that. And I made it my job I crawled into the crawl space and pulled all the stuff out and lugged all the boxes down to where they needed to be. And then when they were all emptied, I lugged all the boxes back up and put them into the crawl space. And my daughter and my wife put on Christmas music and were decorating, and I got the hell out of there and I wrote a weird audio Fisk.
Being the strongest person in a household is like having the world's lamest superpower. It's like, could you open this jar of pickles for me? Sure, Mom. Oh, I don't know what I'd do without you. And it's so much like, Superman, you saved us. You're the strongest man in the world. And it's just like, pickles.
Can't open pickle jars with only the slightest of effort. I'm also the tallest person in the house. Can reach things on tallest shelf with the greatest of ease. That is, I'd never thought about it that way, and I'm going to forever laugh now. My hero. Oh, well, thank you for that, Aaron.
You're welcome.
Oh, it's been
so yeah. Go on.
It's been a long day. My daughter woke up and like, I have a sore throat. Oh, and it was one of those, like, thankfully it turned out she was just fine. Like, normally such a thing would be I'm not feeling good, and so therefore I'm cranky, but also it's just a sore throat, so I've got plenty of energy to put effort into my cranky. But actually she was fairly well behaved, but I have ADD. My daughter technically does not, according to the doctors, but there are doubters. And she definitely did. The two of us got together and got squirreling. And next thing I know, I was like one of those, like, wait, I have the show to put together today before Aaron and I sit down. Oh my God. But she's just like, let's make gummy candy. Hey, that sounds like a great idea. So we made gummy candies. And suddenly next day I realized, like, it's 11 o'clock and I have not done anything yet today. And then I have to take your grandmother to the doctor's office. And furthermore, it's one of those, well, what do we do with the kid? We were planning to do it while you were at school. Well, you get to stay home. You can here's my phone number. You can call that, and then here's the neighbors in the neighborhood that work from home. You can go knock on their door if there's a problem that doesn't involve calling 911 or me. Can I call you if I don't have an emergency? Absolutely. Okay, cool. And she didn't. But I got everything done, and now here we are, ready to do a show.
I don't know if you've seen this or not. It's a meme that's been circulating only about the past week or so, and it features some Dragon Ball characters, but knowing who they are doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've seen this or not.
I know just the one. Yes.
Oh, yeah, the children thinking they're getting candy before bed. Yeah, let's go. And then the adult behind them, it looks like he's about to gib slap them, is titled Melatonin Gummies.
Yep.
And so when you mentioned your daughter wanting to make gummy candy and how she was all spun up, and it's like, maybe you should give her some melatonin candy.
That's exactly, I was thinking about this meme as I was popping out the little Lego men out of the gummy molds. By the way, for those that haven't tried that, I do the King of Random, the late great Grant from the King of Random developed a gummy candy recipe that is pretty darn good. And yeah, it's just essentially one of the small packets of Jell-O mixed with, a half cup of water, a quarter cup of corn syrup, and then 2 packets of unflavored gelatin. And then you dissolve it in cold water, and then you heat it up until it boils, let it cool for a little bit, then pour it into essentially ice cube molds. And make gummy candy. And if you get carried away with it, your entire day can go away. So Aaron.
Yes, Weer'd.
I have been informed that the wonderful Pink Pistols has been extremely busy recently.
Yes, we have. And it's rare that I get to talk about these things. And, well, this is an exception. So, this past Saturday, the 10th of December, the Atlanta chapter of the Pink Pistols hosted a Stop the Bleed class. And this was very deliberately done as a response to the Club Q shooting. And I thought this was absolutely fantastic because, well, one of the things we teach is personal responsibility. And I strongly believe that if you carry a gun for self-defense, you should also carry a tourniquet and know how to use it for exactly the same reason. Maybe someone you love or yourself is shot, or there's some other sort of traumatic bleeding. And in the same way that carrying a gun doesn't make you a cop, it's just another tool in your toolbox. Having a tourniquet, knowing how to use it, it doesn't make you a paramedic, but it gives you a tool to use while you wait for the professionals to arrive. And Stop the Bleed is one of the very few classes that the anti-gunners can't use against us. It's very good publicity. Here is a pro-gun, pro-self-defense organization that is teaching people how to save lives. It's really, really hard. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it'll look pretty cheap and tone deaf. And so this was absolutely fantastic. There were 18 people that showed up for a 3-hour course. And I'm going to brag a little bit here because, well, I'm not going to say that it wouldn't have happened without the help of Operation Blazing Sword, but the head of the Atlanta chapter came to me and said, hey, I'd really like to do this course, but it's expensive. Is there anything we can do? And I said, dude, this is exactly why I wanted Pink Pistols to incorporate into Blazing Sword in the first place. It's so that I can raise money on a national level and pay for these sorts of things. And so the instructor quoted him a flat amount for, as long as they reached a number of break-even students, and they surpassed that. And so it was like, okay, well, I don't know if I should tell you how much it was. I'm just going to play it safe. But it's the sort of thing that a standard working stiff could not easily pay. And so I was like able to go, hey, that's absolutely no problem. I completely have the funds for that. And so as soon as I got the invoice, I paid it out through the Blazing Sword PayPal. And I'm just... It is weird that I am so thrilled to be able to spend money, because this is something I've wanted to do for 6 years now, and this is the first chapter that's finally said, hey, I want to do this. Can I? Yes. Oh my God, yes.
Well, I remember when OBS and Pink Pistols merged, and that was the whole big thing is look, we can create this national umbrella because Pink Pistols was designed to be essentially just hack proof by making it so that each group was individual and couldn't easily interact with the anyone, and there was no central rosters or anything like that. And so, back when it was farm. There were still sodomy laws on the books when Pink Pistols was formed, and so yeah, it could be a real big problem to find out that you were out shooting with the Pink Pistols, because they might think that you were doing some of that evil homo crap, and we could throw you in jail or fire you from your job or all sorts of things like that. That made perfect sense, and it still makes sense to a lesser extent. Thankfully, we have progressed a lot, but I'm not going to say that we're all done. But the fact that, but you can't have it so that a really, really wealthy chapter can help out a smaller chapter. And so, you should be excited. Like, it's one of those, like, you got a really, really cool tool and nobody's using it. What are you doing?
So again, if you are a member of a Pink Pistols chapter, or heck, if you are just someone who wants to get the funds for a Stop the Bleed class, contact me and I will help fund this, because we're a charity. Our job is to spend money and spend it on good things, and this is absolutely a good thing that I can spend it on. There are other things I want to do too. You know, if you have trouble getting a booth at Pride, or if you want to have a concealed carry class, all those things I can help with. But those basically require Pink Pistol chapters. But honestly, if you just want to host a Stop the Bleed class, contact me. Because this is incontrovertible doing good in the world. And I'm not going to have any moral problems or any problems with the board funding these things. I mean, obviously we can't bankrupt ourselves, but I would be happy just to fund a whole bunch of Stop the Bleed classes sponsored by Operation Blazing Sword and Pink Pistols. So that's just, it's such good news.
And may I say, as the person who wades through the swamp of anti-gun propaganda, the one way I think that they could spin a Stop the Bleed class as something not just amazing is to claim that it is somehow a means to prevent death from gunshot injuries. And if we had quote unquote common sense gun control, then no one would get shot, which tell that to people in Brazil and Mexico and South Africa and all that, where guns are virtually illegal. And yet people are still getting shot. But also you can turn around and point out the fact that, hey, you probably, you may never use this to prevent someone, dying from a range accident or a mass casualty event, et cetera, but you may stumble across somebody who is in a car accident. You may find someone who's in a landscaping accident, who cuts themselves in the kitchen. There's all sorts of ways where you can get yourself hurt real bad, real fast. I did a report on my blog back when I did the Gun Death Files of a guy who was carrying his garbage out. I think he was in Florida, actually. And there was a piece of broken glass in his garbage bag, and got it just right so that it poked through the bag, and it poked him and got him in the femoral artery, and he died.
Oh,
yep. That was the end of him. Just taking out the garbage, not attacked by anybody. That's just literally, it was a garbage taking out accident. Like,
what a terrible way to die.
So yeah, it is probably much more likely that you will deploy that tourniquet for a more mundane, dangerous accident than a gunshot wound. So and anti-gunners seem to forget about, like, people stab people too. So there's even in a violent encounter, it may not be a gun that the person's using. So yeah, this is an absolute great thing. I need to get my butt to one.
You do.
I really do.
So, speaking of Blazing Sword Pink Pistols, there's another thing that I am just happy about. It's far less good news. It makes me laugh personally, and really, that's all that matters. And so, as a result of the Club Q shooting, we once again saw the typical calls for stronger gun control, ban everything. And interestingly enough, and I like to think that Blazing Sword has had something to do with it, a lot of the pro-gun queer people and queer organizations, because it's not just us, are standing up and saying, no, we are at risk. You're not going to disarm us. And so I, with the help of the lovely and talented David Bach, created a new design. And it's the rainbow flag, and there's a Spartan helmet right in the middle. And on the top, it says Molon Labe, and on the bottom, it says Oedipus.
It took me a moment to get this one, and I know I'm not alone, and I'm just like, but why Oedipus? I know Molon Labe, but why Oedipus? And
so for people who don't understand, so Molon Labe is Greek for come and take it, or them. And if you've seen the movie 300, you've seen it in action. But the idea is that when the Spartans are at Thermopylae, the Persian army comes up, and one of the Persian leaders, ambassadors, whatever, says, Spartans, throw down your weapons. And the Spartans reply, Persians, come and take them. In other words, no, we're not going to surrender our weapons. Come and get them if you're man enough. Or in the modern version, stack up and send bachelors. Now, Oedipus is a well-known Greek figure, not Spartan. And, he's known for loving his mother a bit too much.
he didn't know that at the time.
That is correct, and that's why it's a tragedy. He was an orphan, and he was fated to kill his father and marry his mother. And at one point he finds his father. I don't remember. It's been such a long time since I read it, but it was one of those, we met and we got off on the wrong foot and now I have to kill you. And then he goes and marries his now widowed mother. And then when he finds out what has happened, he's, oh no, I am cursed by the gods, and plucks out his eyes and goes and lives in the wilderness because it's a Greek tragedy and they love their suffering. But, he has his very own complex named after him. Are y'all picking up what I'm putting down here? I believe the edited version would be Melon Farmer. So Molon Labe Oedipus is come and take the Melon Farmer.
Come and take that, you mother fornicators.
Yes. And it's met with mixed reaction. Not many people are mad. They either love it or they hate it. And you know what? If you hate it, that's fine. Just keep scrolling. But it makes me giggle, and it gets the point across, and I really like it. And so Weer'd is the one who encouraged me to put links to them in the show notes. And we have our own Teespring storefront. And I've linked to the popular ones like a t-shirt and stickers and mugs, but you can get all sorts of things. You can get laptop cases and wall hangings and tote bags, and I don't even know if masks are still a thing now, but you can get a mask. And so you've just got an embarrassment of choices, and they are in the Molon Labe Oedipus style or all of the other styles featuring pink pistols, blazing sword, or my quote from way back, concealed carry is herd immunity against crime. So go ahead, find the ones you want, and, go ahead and place an order because it benefits a 501c3 pro-gun charity. Before people ask, there has been interest in patches. I've only heard from about 25 people, which I think is like the absolute minimum. I'm going to be investigating how much it'll be to get some Velcro-backed patches. I kind of want to keep them in the $10 to $15 range, but for an interest that low, I don't know if it'll happen. So if y'all are interested, if you're like, oh my God, I can't live without that patch, let me know. And that will help me. And so the more I order, that will reduce the per unit cost. It's not going to happen before Christmas because I've got to source them out and have them made. So it'll be sometime next year. But if there's interest, I'm going to have a patch made.
And right now, Weer'd is telling future Weer'd, who's editing this podcast, that he needs to go over and buy himself a shirt, and also probably go buy Ian's new Revolver book, because it's haunting me.
Do I put you on the list as being interested in the patch?
I love patches, and I have such little use for them because I need to build a patch wall. But if you know what, if it would help, I will absolutely chip in for a patch.
It would help.
Okay.
Alrighty then.
My arm has been twisted.
Ow! Stop it.
Peer pressure. It didn't work with cigarettes for me. I smoked cigarettes because they were awesome. But until I got used to the nicotine and got the smoker's cough, gross. But buying patches, I could absolutely be peer pressured into that. So shall we move on to the segments? We got a lot of segments today.
Yeah. We that was it, listeners. That was our main topic, because we've got a bunch of topics. From topic to topic. That didn't sound weird, but you know what? I'm just going to roll with it.
Let's roll with it.
So I need to stop laughing because this next topic is very serious, and I don't want to go, oh, Xander, oh, something awful happened to him. Tell us all about it, Weer'd. Tag, you're it.
As a total downer for us on ACP, Xander was hacked and lost control of his Discord account. It means that we won't see him in the usual digital places until he gets his account restored. But that doesn't mean he can't continue to share his independent thoughts with you.
Welcome to Independent Thoughts with yours truly, Xander Opal. It's interesting one this time. As a bunch of my friends already know, I recently got hacked. I was fooled by someone posing as a person from a trusted room in Discord. It got me to click on a site, download a file, and run it. And spent a fair bit of time angry. Did not engage this person because there is no point in giving them more information than they already probably harvested from my computer. Simply first thing I did was start letting folks know, hey, got hacked, ignore stuff from me. So the thing is, I've been working on not being angry and putting myself in a more productive state of mind, because quite honestly, it wasn't personal at all from this person. I'm as much their job as it is for somebody at a fast food place to throw a burger patty on an old bun and smear some ketchup and mustard on it. And that's the thing about criminals. By and large, you're just a widget on their assembly line. There's nothing. All you are is a goal to a payday. If it isn't something that you have, such as some money or resources, it's who they can use you to get to. See also, various businesses have been broken into digitally by someone attacking one of their subcontractors. And much as it sucks, a bit of understanding of how criminals think is important in defending against them and dealing with them. A lot of the resources that the Second Amendment community shares and discusses is in fact about this, and it seems to be something that the anti-gunners and a lot of anti-freedom people, regardless of political position, don't understand, is that they can think that criminals will think like the average person. The average person is law-abiding and, by and large, intends to do well by each other, or at least neutral. The criminals think around things. On the low end of the scale, of course, they just simply flat out ignore the rules, threaten violence in exchange for money or other things. Now, higher ends, of course, I think I was the victim of the equivalent of a digital mugging, just simply an opportunity, pull information that's probably already out there, and hey, you'll get your stuff back if I send money, and oh yeah, they won't sell it, I promise, by someone who does dishonest things. Whatever, I'll deal with it. And then, of course, there's the folks who look at laws as protecting them. Oh, good. I won't get hurt, or less likely to be injured or killed. Gun control is OSHA for criminals. And so, anyway, to defend against criminals, you need to think a little bit like them, or at least know how they think, to shore up against them. For example, that's where channels like Lockpicking Lawyer are great for understanding what it takes to bypass a lock, and so you can make judgments on, okay, this will cover whatever percentage of people attempt to get through a lock, and then if it's worth it to try to block even more. I've been thinking about things like gun safes and such. You know, a lockbox the size of a shoebox is not good if, for example, if it isn't bolted down. If it's just the equivalent of a shoebox thrown under the bed, someone can grab it and walk off and then figure out how to open it on their own time. And so I have been a little bit too busy to work out a script for this one. Sorry for the rambling. Studying how to avoid actual problems rather than perception of problems is another thing that's important to do. You know, digitally, it's like, okay, yeah, I'll avoid the skeevy websites and corners, and forgot the rules of phishing, which I listen to frequently on various security-related podcasts, and allowed myself to be pressured, which was a huge red flag. Then, similarly, walking down the street a while back with a sibling, they're familiar with the area. It's like, guy come offering CD of their own works. I was on edge, and my sister was all, oh, hey, that's cool, I'll support your art. And obviously, my threat detection was way off. And so, while I was focused on someone who was a everyday honest person, I was probably ignoring potential actual threats. And so, that's the other thing about gun control is the people who are proposing gun control and who are buying into gun control don't understand what the actual threats are. And so they avoid the thing that scares them, which is not a problem, and don't see the thing that is the problem that could potentially get them. And as I've noted before about getting scammed, I don't want to lose a certain amount of human generosity, of trust in other people, because I don't want to be that person that's dialed up to 11 and paranoid of everyone and everything and just burn themselves out and live a miserable life. There's costs I'm willing to pay, and to be a decent person, and sometimes that gets taken advantage of, but overall, I like to think that the results speak for themselves in the good friends and family that I have. But anyway, that's all for now. Have fun, be safe, and I hope it gave you something to think about. Oh, and Weer'd, could you kindly link in the show notes Weird Al's classic Virus Alert? I think everybody will appreciate that.
Poor Xander. I hope he gets everything recovered soon. And he's got a good point. Criminals are misanthropes. And be it a mugger who will beat you for your wallet, or a scammer calling you, telling you they can eliminate the debt on your credit card, or someone who hacks your computer, they don't care if you get hurt. They just care what they can gain for themselves.
I actually have two friends who were targeted by this. Well, I suppose I should say fell victim to this. And, well, Xander said it himself. He should have known better. And I wouldn't have said that, except he said it first. It happens. We all lose attention for a moment. My other friend, I don't know how it was with Xander, but with my other friend, she knew someone who was a game designer. And when it was, I don't know exactly what was said, but she was under the impression that the game designer had designed a new game, and hey, would you like to test it out? And okay, I can understand how that happens. So yeah, just when you receive a link to click on and it seems suspicious, especially if they want you to download something, verify. Just make sure that this person is who they say. And in fact, as a follow-on to what Xander said, after he had sent out the email saying he had been hacked, I actually got a message from his hacker saying, yo, how can I contact the owner of this account? And while I wasn't entirely sure what the game was, probably wanted a recovery email or something like that. And it was just like, well, my reply was, nice try, hacker. I'm not giving you a recovery email address. And I haven't heard anything back. So that's another thing we should be wary of. If someone that you know says, hey, this is someone else, how do I get into contact with the owner? Don't answer.
Mm. And the other one was my mother-in-law actually got taken by the Windows tech support scammers. Is she was cruising some website and got one of like the big mock blue screens of death pop-up ads that like suddenly popped up. And my mother-in-law, she's in her 70s. She's an absolute technophobe, and like she's an anxious person as well. So suddenly it says that her computer is dying and dead, but quickly call this 800 number and we will save you. And she called, and she was in such a panic that all of the little voices in the back of her head that were telling her this is not right, this is not legitimate, she just ignored them because she just wanted to get this problem done with. So it absolutely happens.
About 10 years ago, my mom came to me practically in tears because there was something wrong with the computer and she couldn't fix it. And so I came out to look at the family computer, and it was displaying one of those, your computer has a virus, and the synthesized voice was playing. And it was designed to induce panic. Now, fortunately, my mom is so technologically inept, and I'm not dissing her. She will say this herself. So it's not an insult. She didn't know what to do, so she didn't know enough to fall for the scam, which was good because she was in such a panic, like your mom was. She would have done anything to get it to shut up. And so I came out, and I have to give some degree of credit to this particular piece of filth, because I was not able to close out of the web page. I couldn't even shut down Internet Explorer. I basically had to hard reboot the computer in order to get off that page.
Crazy. I've had some of those where I've had to go into the task manager and physically end the browser's the browser from Windows.
In hindsight, that probably would have worked, but I was not completely awake.
Mm-hmm.
And my thoughts, yeah, when I don't have enough caffeine in my brain, I tend to revert to the brute force approach. And it was just, if the computer's off, the sound goes away.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Now I will boot up and we'll see if there's a problem. Boots up, sipping the coffee. Oh, hey, everything's working now. Okay, Mom, here's what happened. Nothing's wrong. It's taken care of. Oh, thank you. So, yeah, they are nasty little psychological predators. Ugh, I hate them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's one of the two reasons why I scam bait. And those who subscribe to the ACP blooper reels have heard me messing with the scammers. Yes, I despise them as well for the same thing. They took my mother-in-law they took several of my relatives to the cleaners, and caused a whole lot of problems. But also, I'm messing with them because they all must pay, and I'm going to tell them horrible, horrible, horrible things and play obnoxious games and waste their time. But also, I really like to figure out, all right, what are they trying to do? It's not just enough to identify it as a scammer and not get taken, but I want to figure out, all right, how are they trying to get in? It's just like with the lockpicking lawyer. What is a lock that is secure, and what is a lock that all someone needs to do is figure out the one trick and they can get into it no matter what without the key. It's good to know what the scammers are doing to try and get money from you.
One thing that happened to my mom pretty recently, she got a call from someone, and it was obviously an Indian call center because she was having trouble understanding them, and she told me afterwards. And that's when I said, you've gotten scammed. But they were claiming to be from medical insurance and like how the doctor had prescribed, like a back brace and this and that and the other thing. And interestingly enough, my mom had gone to the doctor about that sort of thing. And so she just thought, okay, maybe she had forgotten something. And the scam was they needed her Medicare number so that they could defraud the government somehow. And so, okay, yeah, that's just happened. You know what, Mom? Give me your card. I'm going to call Medicare, and I'm going to tell them what happened, and is this a problem? And they said, yep, that's a problem, but thanks for letting us know. We will cancel that number, and we will issue your mother a new card with the new number. And then the bastards tried it again, and then it was just, I picked it up, and I said something rude. I don't remember what it was, but it was something along the lines of I suggested they auto-fornicate, and I'm onto them, and, leave my mother alone. So that's another way people can get taken. Especially if you're elderly.
Tell them that you fornicated with their dad. That's always gets them through a loop. That's how it go. Wait, what?
Is that a cultural thing I'm not aware of?
I just usually there it's always your mom. I like to mess with their dads.
Okay.
That
was going to be my other choice.
It gets inside their OODA loop. But yeah, they're just, it's one of those, like, I've gotten them to admit that, yeah, they're scammers and that they don't care. They are more than happy with ripping off pensioners and little old ladies and people and all that. Like, they're absolutely terrible people, and there are creatures like this. This is why we carry guns, and this is why we need to be vigilant.
I do think it's very interesting that, well, what I think a lot of people forget is that human beings are predators. And in the absence of other things to prey on, we'll prey on each other. And that's what crime is. It's predation.
Totally.
So a good way to keep predators away from you is to shoot them from long distance with optics. I know, that was the kludgy transition, and you heard the gears grinding, but David is here on part 4 on his optics segment.
Hi, and welcome to Gun Lovers and Other Strangers. In my continuing series on the history and use of sights and optics on firearms, I'd like to talk about collimator-based sights and what came after. The concept for the collimator-type optic has been around for much longer than most people realize. The first designs date back to the early 1900s and are the basis for nearly every type of heads-up display currently in use. Some of the earliest collimator sights used were mounted on World War I biplanes, and they're still commonly found on weapons such as mortars. A variation of this concept for small arms is what's known as an occluded eye gun sight, or OEG. With this type of sight, there's an illuminated or otherwise high-visibility focal point in the sight, but the sight tube is not see-through. When using this kind of collimator-type sight, the shooter keeps both eyes open, and the brain superimposes the high-visibility element in front of the dominant eye over the view of the target in front of the non-dominant eye. This concept is exemplified in the commercial OEG units purchased and used by American soldiers at the Sante raid in Vietnam. These optics are still manufactured by the Armson company in both retro and more modern designs. The OEG technique can also be replicated with a standard illuminated reticle scope by leaving the front cover closed. However, when using modern scopes with illuminated reticles, especially magnified scopes, an alternate use is possible. Glyn Bindon, the founder of Trujicon and a noted optical designer, developed the Bindon aiming concept. This allows the shooter to focus on the high visibility reticle as a type of collimator sight with the dominant eye, while at the same time viewing the target area with the non-dominant eye. As with the OEG, the brain superimposes the reticle on the target. However, when it's time to engage that target, the non-dominant eye is closed and the dominant eye now looks through the optic at the target. Once mastered, this technique is reported to enable the shooter to maintain a wide field of view, yet switch to a magnified target view fairly quickly. While a commercial attempt was made to apply the see-through aircraft reflex gun sight concept to small arms in the 1940s, this was the Nydar sight made by the Swain Nelson Company, the concept didn't really take off at that time. However, in the 1970s, this idea was successfully combined with an electronic illuminated reticle, or aiming point, and the red dot we are familiar with today was born. Reflex, prism, and holographic sights all fall under the red dot umbrella, even if the dot isn't red or, for that matter, even a dot. Though they are traditionally red, there are also green and dual-color optics available. This style has become much more popular over the past decade or so. In addition, reticle style has expanded from the traditional dot to include a variety of other shapes. Basically, while all reflex sights are red dots, not all red dots are reflex sights. But I'll cover this subfamily of optics in a future segment.
Winchester, 300 Magnum, 180 grains.
Okay.
Muzzle velocity.
3,070.
Drop at 200 yards.
2 minutes low.
300 yards.
5.3 inches.
300 yards, 150 grain.
4.8 inches.
That about wraps up this segment. If you have any questions for me or suggestions for future segments or a comment on a past segment, please post them on the Assorted Calibers Podcast Facebook or MeWe pages, and Aaron or Weer'd will make sure I see them. I'm also a contributor on the Blue Collar Prepping blog, which can be found at bluecollarprepping.blogspot.com. We're always looking for people interested in submitting posts to the blog, so please check out the site. Finally, I'm also a published author, and books with my stories can be found on Amazon under the name Brenna Bock. That's BRENABOCK. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. I'm David, and this is Gun Lovers and Other Strangers.
So, fun fact for people who didn't know what that bit at the end was, I guessed. I wasn't certain, and I guessed correctly. That was The Mechanic with Charles Bronson and Jan Michael Vincent.
Yeah, I hadn't seen that one, but I absolutely recognized Charles Bronson's voice. So I'm like, David, what did you use? And he's like, I'll give you a hint. And he said Jan Michael Vincent was the other voice. And I went, okay, well, I know that he did not do a ton of movies. And so there was a very, very few movies that he did. And I believe only that one was with Charles Bronson. But yeah.
I have seen 3 Charles Bronson movies in my life. I've seen one of the Death Wishes. I don't remember which one it was. And then I saw The Mechanic, and then I saw telephone, or it's spelled weirdly, Telefon. And I mean, oh Lord, I only saw it once, and it was when I was literally a child. But the idea is, it's a Cold War thriller where sleeper agents, Russian Soviet sleeper agents, are activated when they receive a phone call that recites Robert Frost's, 2 roads diverged in a yellow wood, miles to go before I sleep. Mm-hmm. And then that puts them into a fugue state, and then their hypnotic programming has them engage in sabotage or espionage, and then they kill themselves with a cyanide pill. And that's about all. I don't even know. I mean, Charles Bronson is the good guy, but I don't know who he works for, how he fixes it. But, to my younger than 10 years old mind, it was like, oh, that's pretty interesting.
That's crazy. I haven't seen that. You haven't seen The Great Escape?
I have not. No.
It's good.
I'm sure it is. Although you missed the opportunity to tell me it was great, because it was right there in the title. I mean, I'm sure it is. It's got like an all-star cast. It's just, I don't know. The opportunity's never really presented itself, and I don't really think about it to go out of my way to watch it. Although, now that that's been said and the Christmas season is upon us, I have a very high confidence that one of the people in the ACP channel is going to send me the DVD.
Fair.
I mean, it's going to happen. I will be surprised if it doesn't happen. How about that?
Well, there you have it. That's a good Christmas present. Yeah, I've actually a friend of mine has one of those retro optics. I think his is actually vintage, with the occluded eye or whatever it's called. It's one of those, like, I messed around with it. It does seem to work, and I've seen Ian and Carl on. I think they were doing it on In Range TV. They set up some rifles with those, and they were getting hits. So it clearly does work, and of course it was used in combat in Vietnam. So they wouldn't have done that if they didn't work. It's an interesting technology. Oddball returns to the show, this time with a follow-up to his segment on cheap guns. See, Oddball is a little bit of a conundrum. He likes cheap guns, but he also likes expensive knives.
Welcome to Oddball's Corner Pocket. This week, I thought I'd follow up on the segment I did in episode 202. In that episode, I talked about my attraction to cheap guns. This week, I'm going to talk about why you might want an expensive knife. First off, I would like to mention that I've always found it a bit confounding that a lot of folks that carry guns carry the cheapest knife that they can find. And a few don't even carry a knife at all. These people usually tell me that they would just lose it or break their knife, and really, a knife's a knife. What's the big deal? This, all while carrying something that they will hopefully never use beyond punching holes in paper at the range, that cost them several $100s, and most probably time and money for the, quote, privilege of exercising their right to carry it. Heck, I've had this argument with folks that easily dropped over $1,000 on their carry rig alone. Now, let me be completely clear. I am in no way trying to say that you shouldn't spend money on your carry gun. As I said in my previous segment, you should carry a reliable gun that you are most comfortable carrying and can afford. If that's a $300 Bursa, that's fine. If that's a $4,000 Nighthawk, I might be a little jealous and might ask to try it out next time we're on the range, but I won't argue about you carrying it. The same thing can be said about knives, both in the sense of quality and price. If anything, more so. One of the biggest things that you give up when you go with a cheap knife is the blade steel. The simple fact is that better steels cost more money to manufacture and to work with. In general, the cheaper knives will bend, break, chip, and dull faster than more expensive ones. Of course, this isn't a hard and fast rule. In the past couple of years, I've seen some manufacturers decide to use budget steels on knives that they're charging a good bit for, and I've seen more budget-friendly brands step up their game and put higher-end steels in knives without increasing their price too much. If you're the kind of person that regularly finds your knife dull, chipped, or straight up broken, it might actually save you money in the long run to spend the extra money for better steel. For more information on knife steels, check out my segment I did way back in episode 28. More expensive knives may also use more expensive materials for their handles. It's not uncommon for higher-end knives to use titanium frames, or materials like micarta, stabilized woods like pekka wood, or carbon fiber for their liners. These materials can both be more attractive and more durable than the stuff used on cheaper knives. Another thing that tends to make a knife cost more is interesting and unique designs. While you can definitely find unique designed handles on knives sold at your local gas station, these knives all tend to actually share the same basic mechanisms and overall design. On the other hand, you can find knife makers coming up with new locking mechanisms and overall blade shapes in the higher price range. Until very recently, if you wanted something like an access lock, you had to go with Benchmade. Spyderco remains the only company that I know of that uses their compression lock, and there are a handful of other locking mechanisms that are still under patent, and therefore only available from that maker or a company that they work with. CRKT has become kind of famous over the years for trying out new and unique designs. Sometimes they manage to still make them relatively inexpensive, like with the Van Hoy Snap Lock, but often they are forced to set the price a bit higher. The Provoke Karambit is a wonderful example. It has a truly unique folding mechanism, but also sports a fairly hefty price tag, with the, quote, budget version coming in at $100. Incidentally, it's also my favorite folding karambit to carry because of that unique mechanism. You can also easily spend a lot of money on what can be referred to as pocket jewelry. Just like with watches, pens, lighters, what have you, the design of a knife can be chosen as much for their look as the function. Be that a Damascus steel blade, an engraved handle, or simply pretty materials used as liners. These are often upgraded versions of pre-existing knives. For some examples, I recommend either looking at the store-exclusive collection at Knifecenter.com or the very pretty knives that Santa Fe Stoneworks produces. Of course, a big reason to drop more money on a knife is the overall quality of the knife. Just like everything else, fit and finish costs money, and often quickly suffers when a company is looking to cut costs. Using a more expensive knife should be a better experience than a cheap knife. It should open and close smoother, the lockup should be more secure, and of course, it should cut better than a cheap knife. It may sound weird, but cutting open a box or some fruit or whatever is a more pleasant experience using my $260 Spyderco Spydiechef than when I grab my $55 SOG Terminus. That's not saying that the SOG is a bad knife or that it doesn't do the job, just that the Spydiechef is that much better. I often use the analogy of cars. My wife drives a little Mazda 2, which is a little subcompact car, and it's a fine car. It gets her where she's going without issue. It wasn't expensive, and she's happy with it. That said, it's far from being a luxury vehicle or a sports car. It could be argued that that vehicle is sufficient for a large percentage of the population, but I'm not going to question why someone decided that they'd rather get a Tesla or a BMW or a Ford 150 or whatever, assuming that they can afford it, of course. And I personally would argue that someone should at least look at something a bit nicer if they can, especially if they plan on driving a lot. Of course, if that's what they say they want, as was the case with her, then that's what they should be driving. Of course, not everyone can, nor should, be riding around in a Bentley either. I hope this helps and that you've learned something. If you'd like to read more of my thoughts, I can be found at gunscarstech.com. And if you have any questions, comments, or thoughts for future segments, I can be reached at oddball@gunscarstech.com or on the ACP Facebook page. Until next time, have a good one.
Yeah, we've got kind of a running joke where Oddball will tell me how much he spent on a knife, and I will just boggle, and I will say, why would anyone want that when they could have had money instead? Because, I can absolutely see the value, but when you're paying like triple digits for a knife, I'm just going, this thing better be made out of lightsabers and pleasure me for that kind of money. But, we've all got different tastes, and Oddball is a knife snob and a gun trash panda.
And what's really hilarious is that, there kind of is an interesting conundrum, is that cheap guns, generally work reasonably well, especially if they're recently made. Some of the older stuff, like the Ring of Fire guns, they kind of work like crap and might be a little on the dangerous side. But name your piece of crap gun. A Taurus Curve. It is a crappy gun. It's not a great gun. You could do a whole lot better, but it's gonna work more or less, and it's gonna be safe. And then the high points work. They're stone axe primitive, but boy, they work. They really do work. They are not terrible guns, and they're for short money. But yeah, that cheap knife that you found at the gas station or at the gun show or at the flea market, yeah, you are going to quickly find yourself regretting that purchase, because it's going to be. I remember one of my nephews pulled out a knife, and it was something he just bought just at a convenience store, and the blade was wobbling like nobody's business when it was out, and the edge was all chipped and folded and had all sorts of issues. And it's one of those you'd be better off paying a little bit more money and getting something better. And
I'm still thinking of those cheap parrot-shaped ceramic knives Oddball got for us at I think it was NRAM 2019.
Yes, mine's holding up quite well. I've got it right here. It stays on my desk. But
do you use it to open anything other than maybe envelopes?
Yeah, I'll occasionally cut open. It's really just anything that I'm doing, or if I'm doing anything rough, because if I break it, I'll throw it away. I'm looking forward to the day I break it. Congratulations, that knife is used up. But just because Oddball will buy a knife for decent gun money, doesn't mean that that's the only one, or even that you don't need to spend essentially gas station knife money. If you look for sales, I've got a Smith & Wesson M&P knife that is really, really nice. I'm surprised on it, and I think I paid $12 or $15 for it, and I got it at I think I can't remember if it was Midway or Brownells, but they were just there. It was on sale. It was a clearance item, and there's places like Blade HQ that are clearance houses where they will have lots of sales. And so yeah, keep your eyes peeled, and you can get a decent knife for short money, because I don't like carrying anything that I'm not comfortable breaking or losing. If I can't just throw it away and just be well, that's a shame, but oh well, I don't really want to carry it, because I've seen people, where the knife gets caught on something and falls somewhere or slips out, or you're doing something that, because that's the one tool you've got available, and you end up breaking the blade, and that's just the way the cookie crumbles. And that's kind of what I think an EDC knife is. It's kind of a sacrificial item, and so I don't want to spend huge money for my everyday carry.
So the most expensive knife I own is actually around $90. It was a present. I didn't buy it. And it's an odd piece, but I'm very happy with it. I haven't used it a whole lot because it's very specialized. But it is known as the S.U.L.U, Sliding Ultimate Locking Utility. And if this means anything to you, it's designed by Mike Vellecamp. So, okay, Weer'd. Have you ever heard of the S.U.L.U knife? It's something that the Inuits use.
Yep, I have one.
Okay. So, for people who don't know, the S.U.L.U is basically sort of a half-moon knife that the Inuit use for chopping and scraping, and we have one, not like Inuit made. It's got a plastic handle, whatever. But it's really good for chopping things. It's fantastic for cutting pizza. And it's a really good kitchen knife. And so the S.U.L.U is an S.U.L.U, but it folds like a pocket knife. And so you can unfold it and then just use it like a regular knife. But then when you press a button, you can then slide it and the handle and then the blade slides into the handle. And so you can use it like a traditional S.U.L.U. And it's really neat. And I have it in my camping gear. I haven't had a chance to really use it, but in the little that I've used it, it works really well, and I really, really like it. So there you go, Oddball. That is the most expensive knife that I own.
So how does this thing work? Because I see the image that you just posted, and I found an image online. Mm-hmm. Oh, I see. It folds all the way around backwards.
Oh, okay. So what you do is you unfold it completely. Then you press that little button in the back, and that basically unlocks it, engages something, and then you push, and it slides along that cutout. That long horizontal cutout is where it actually slides across the pivot pin. And then it locks into place like an S.U.L.U. And then you press the button again to unlock it, and then you've got that little indent in the tip that's, a finger or thumb nail cut out, and you pull, and then it's got a liner lock that you do to put to fold the blade back.
Well, that's very interesting.
Yeah, it's super neat. If I end up going camping, I will use it, but I haven't been because, between the COVID lockdowns and allergies and being an introvert and a misanthrope, I don't get out much. But I'm sure that when I use it, it's going to hold up really well.
Well, that is really cool. It's an interesting design, too, just like that crazy karambit design that CRKT makes. Did you see that one?
I think so. Was there a link in the show notes?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll go click on it then. It's the Provoke?
Yes.
Yes, I have seen that. It was what I was thinking of.
Mm-hmm.
That is... Okay, it's not exactly a transformer, but it's a transformer.
It's a transformer. It's absolutely a transformer. Yeah, no, it is pretty cool. Not exactly what I would choose for a carry. Number one, I've never really seen that much of the allure of karambits to begin with, and then number two, it's big and bulky, folded, and then it's big and bulky, but with a teeny tiny blade when deployed, which. Hey, you know what? If you've trained with that and it is a tried and true platform, that's fine. But I will stick with more of a traditional shaped knife.
I mean, karambits are fantastic ways to self-inflict punctures and degloving injuries on yourself.
Degloving injuries! Don't Google that, people. Do not Google that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just keep scrolling.
So we started the show talking about, or at least referencing, the shooting at Club Q, and we're going to wrap up with a weird Fisk about Joe Biden referencing the Club Q shooting and other things, and making it about himself.
I thought I'd take a break from my Brady campaign project to Fisk President Joe Biden as he spoke at the National Vigil for all victims of gun violence. It starts with Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy introducing a young lady who will introduce Joe Biden.
The introduction of President Biden is not mine, but it will be Jackie Haggerty. Jackie Haggerty is a hero of mine, as I mentioned. She was a second grader at Sandy Hook Elementary School in December 2000 for a classroom just across the hall from those classrooms we know so much about today. Today, she is a courageous survivor, and she is a courageous advocate for tougher, common-sense gun laws. Jackie Haggerty.
First up, sorry for the echo. This was held in St. Mark's Episcopal Church in Washington, D.C. And either the news agency that had cameras rolling wasn't able to plug directly into the soundboard, or it just couldn't avoid the reverb. Chris Murphy is a big league gun banner. Joe Biden, of course, is rabidly anti-gun. And it appears that Miss Haggerty also supports the anti-gun cause. So much for all victims of gun violence. Just the ones who support banning guns are welcome.
My name is Jackie Haggerty. I am 17 years old, and I co-lead the Junior Newtown Action Alliance at Newtown High School.
Just like when Michael Bloomberg created March for Our Lives, it was the Everytown team running the show. But they put the children up front. Because how hard are you going to push back if the person shouting anti-gun propaganda isn't even a legal adult?
Tonight, family, friends, and survivors gather from across the country to remember the people that were taken too soon by gun violence and make a commitment to honor the lives of those we love by taking action.
And by taking action, she means pushing for restrictions on the ownership and use of firearms. Such a shame to make a vigil for victims of a crime, but restrict it only to victims who are willing to be tools for an agenda. There are many examples of people who have been victims of gun violence, and that has only strengthened their support of the Second Amendment. Last Fisk, I mentioned Kyle Kashev, Andrew Pollack, and Ryan Petty from Parkland. And of course, we can go all the way back to Texas Representative Susanna Hupp, who lost her parents in the Lubby's Diner massacre while she was eating lunch with them. Ms. Hupp went on to run for public office and help push Texas from a surprisingly anti-gun state in the direction of becoming one of the most gun-friendly states in the Union. I have a link in the show notes to her book. It appears to be out of print, so maybe ask your local library to see if they can source a copy. Clearly the message here is survivors like them are not welcome.
For the last decade, our childhood has been stolen by gun violence. Guns are now the #1 killer of children in America. And we are asked to be brave while hiding under our desks, in our classrooms, while too many elected officials lack the courage to pass common sense laws to save our lives.
I can't speak for what trauma like that does to your childhood, but I can speak for what happens when children are thrust into adult roles, such as child actors, musicians, or figureheads for adult political campaigns. I think we all have the same feeling when we hear the phrase child star. Don't we all wonder why Kurt Russell seems so normal? Also, the leading cause of death for youth in the United States, and really actually all the way up to age 44, is unintentional injury. After that, it starts going into cancer and then heart disease. And only until we get to the age 10 to 14 is suicide the second cause, and it's considerably lower. And it is, of course, only half of those are done with firearms. And then 15 to 24, homicide becomes the second cause of death. So of that group, at least half of them are no longer children. So this is entirely misleading.
Thankfully, we have a president who does more than send thoughts and prayers. He has already passed more executive actions on gun safety than any other president, and he has relentlessly pushed for a ban on weapons of war. He understands that we are living in fear and we have suffered enough. It is my privilege to introduce President Joe Biden, our gun safety champion.
I have a link in the show notes to the White House page on executive orders that are gun-related. There are 21 of them, and they have meaningful impacts, such as, I quote, the Justice Department published Model Extreme Risk Protection Order legislation to make it easier for states that want to adopt these red flag laws to do so. And the Department of Veterans Affairs launched a new paid media campaign featuring a series of public service announcements to reinforce the key message that a simple gun law can save lives. So like his views on banning assault weapons, most of his executive orders are pure posturing. Well, let's hear from the gun safety champion himself.
I'm sure if the lights are on all of you instead of me, there's a lot of people in this church that I know and have not only consoled one another, but have taken time to console me in the loss of my family.
I'm not the important one here, you are. But let's talk about me. He doubled down shortly after this.
To all of you here tonight, it's under different circumstances, but I know a little bit what the loss feels like. It'll be an anniversary on the 18th of this month. I lost my wife and daughter and nearly lost my 2 sons when a tractor trailer broadsided them. And it's not long after that, an anniversary of losing my son. I know that feeling. Everyone's different, but I know that feeling.
It is terrible that Biden lost his wife and daughter, and both his sons were injured in the car crash. And his son died of brain cancer in 2015, possibly because of burn pit exposure while serving in Iraq. But doesn't it seem a little classless to bring them up in this way in a church filled with people who have been touched by mass murder? Also, may I say that President Biden has abused the death of his wife and daughter in the past by claiming the truck driver that hit his family car was drunk. Except the driver was not only not charged with drunk driving, but also not charged with any traffic violations. It's likely that the late Mrs. Biden had in fact run a stop sign.
10 years ago, this nation's vigil was created here in Washington to pray for the souls of Sandy Hook and their families. Ever since that time, this church has been opened its doors to more victims and more families of a violence that rips at the very soul of this nation.
Except this whole event is nothing but a rally for gun control.
And what I admire so much about all of you is you show up and remember, because remembering brings it back the very moment that it happened. But all of you at the time, and I spent several days up in Sandy Hook and then went back. At the time, it was astounding to see, even then, the courage that was represented.
What exactly is he talking about here? The bulk of the president's speech that clocked in at just under 6 minutes in total is like this. Much like his executive orders, his speech is mostly empty platitudes.
Together, we've made some important progress. The most significant gun law passed in 30 years, but still not enough. Still not enough.
First up, there have been a bunch of other gun laws passed since the 1994 assault weapons ban, like the NICS Improvement Act of 2007 or the Fix NICS Act of 2017. Of course, these laws were actually endorsed by the NRA and gun owners, unlike the Safer's Community Act. You'll note that he says it's still not enough. Even in 1994, when the most massive gun control law ever in the history of this nation, the 1994 assault weapons ban, was passed, the anti-gun group saw it only as a starting point and quickly started shifting their attention to more gun bans and demanding federal licenses for gun ownership and shrinking the national magazine capacity ban from 10 rounds to 6. Don't take any of this lightly. They will never stop so long as any citizen owns a firearm for personal protection.
Even as our work continues to limit the number of bullets can be in a cartridge, the type of weapons that can be purchased and sold, the attempt to ban assault weapons, a whole range of things that are just common sense, just simple common sense.
Well, I'll just note that the number of bullets in a cartridge is a simple slip-up that can only happen to somebody who knows next to nothing about firearms. Especially ironic because Joe Biden is Mr. Get a Shotgun.
If you want to protect yourself, get a double-barrel shotgun. As I told my wife, I said, Jill, if there's ever a problem, just walk out on the balcony here or walk out, put that double-barrel shotgun and fire 2 blasts outside the house.
Besides those rare military duplex loads, generally shotgun shells are the only ammunition that will have more than 1 bullet in a cartridge. All the other laws he suggests are crap as well, making his definition of common sense not line up with Merriam-Webster.
But you know, we did it before. You may remember, in the 90s we did it to help the very people in here led by Speaker Pelosi in the House and many others. And we did it, and guess what? It worked. The number of violent and mass murders reduced were significant. A lot of people's lives were saved. And we can do it again.
Except it didn't work. Studies have shown that the assault weapons ban did nothing to reduce violent crime or mass murder. Further, the years after the assault weapons ban was allowed to sunset and AR-15s and double-stack pistols became ubiquitous in American gun collections, were even less violent. Also, the school shooting that most shooters list as an inspiration, Columbine, happened in 1999, right in the middle of the federal ban.
And they'll always be with you, no matter what happens. They're always with you. How many of you ask yourself, what would my son or daughter want me to do at this moment? They're in your heart. They're part of you.
Except they are likely children. My daughter wants to eat sugar right before bedtime. Hell, when I was a kid, I supported Senator Biden in his campaign to ban so-called assault weapons because my parents were anti-gun. Had I died in a school shooting, they would assume I would have wanted gun control. That doesn't mean that's good advice. This was presented at a vigil for victims held in a church, but really, it was a rally for gun control, and we must fight back against the lies and the propaganda. Those are your anti-gun talking points and a few rebuttals to combat them. Aaron, was I wrong? Was it classless for him to make that all about him and his wife and daughter and son?
Yes. I mean, you're mostly. I'm going to go with mostly because I understand what he was trying to do because I have a lot of friends on the spectrum. And similarly, when someone is going through a problem, they will share something that they have gone through. And some people see that as trying to one-up them or make it about themselves. But for neurodivergent people, their thought process is, I know what you're going through because I went through something similar. I'm going to share the something similar that I went through so, you understand that I understand. And I think that's what he was trying to do. He was trying to say, yes, I understand the grief that you're going through because I too have a similar grief. My family didn't die in the same way, but it was sudden and unexpected and tragic, and so I get it. So it's not like 100%, tone deaf, but it's like 80% because someone should have taken a look at that and said, okay, Mr. President, I know what you're trying to do, but this is not the way to do it. And to the best of my knowledge, Joe Biden isn't neurodivergent. So yeah, it should have been rephrased, but yeah, it was bad. I'm not as completely aghast as you are, but it was still pretty bad.
You are aghast on the fact that this is a national vigil, a day of remembrance, and yet it was all for supporters of gun control.
Mm-hmm.
It's no chance. Like the number of people that have been through this and have become champions for the Second Amendment for the exact reason, I wish I had a gun. I wish our laws were better and not the laws that restrict the people bear arms. But the Uvalde school shooting was so bad because the police did a terrible job. They need better training and they need better accountability. And the Parkland shooting was bad because the police were inept, and furthermore, nobody was tracking this guy down when he was causing all these problems well before he ever bought his gun. And so yeah, there's more to this than just take away the guns and put red flag laws and make you have background checks and all that. There's more to it, but not how they see it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, as you mentioned, if they had really wanted to get everyone who had been victimized by this, they would have gotten someone like Kyle Kashuv or Andrew Pollack or someone else from Sandy Hook, but they didn't want to sully the message. Okay, so I can understand that it could be considered in poor taste for grieving families to have someone go up there and be pro-gun. But, this shouldn't have been politicizing guns at all. If this was a day of remembrance for people who had died, I feel, and I'm sure that there are those who disagree with me, you could have done that without making it politicized.
I mean, I think that would be easy. Yeah. No, just make it a day of remembrance and a day of reflection and camaraderie instead of demanding political action. But
it's one of the things that I keep bringing up because there are so many anti-gun prohibitionists who think that we are pro-murder, and we aren't. We both agree that murder of innocents, well, that is murder, because otherwise it's justifiable homicide. But yeah, we all agree that murder is bad. We all agree that innocent people shouldn't die. We simply disagree on the best way to do that. Mm-hmm. They think that the best way to do that is to take away guns. We say, no, that's not the best way. The best way is to teach people how to defend themselves. I still look at this, like that line goes from one of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. So we agree on the basis, and now we're just haggling on the details. The problem is that these details are pretty freaking big. And so it would be difficult, yes, but I think it would be possible for them to have gone, okay, we aren't going to talk about guns. We're going to talk about murder is bad. And if you phrase it like that, then, any person who was pro-gun would, yeah, murder is bad. Children shouldn't be killed. Absolutely agree. This was a tragedy. But yeah, there is this terrible tendency, and honestly, both sides do it, to politicize deaths for gain. And it's disgusting, but that's unfortunately how politics works these days, and I don't know how to fix that. I don't know if it can be fixed.
Yeah, I think there's far too many people that see it as a feature, not a bug. But you know who's not a bug?
That would be our lovely listeners.
That is our lovely... Oh, they're lovely. Our listeners are lovely, but you know who's even lovelier is our supporters on Patreon. You know what, you lovely listeners? If you want to get to be better looking, go to patreon.com/Assorted podcast and sign up. And you'll get early release of the podcast, plus bonus content. Plus bonus content like the hilarious blooper reel, the ACP film tracks, and the ACP mag dump, and these will all make you better looking.
Also, please remember to rate us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe to us on the platform of your choice, and share the show with your friends, both online and off, because it'll make you smell good.
Ooh, I can smell that from here.
Like warm apple pie.
Like warm apple pie. Like vanilla ice cream. You can get more from me at my blog, which is weirdworld.com. And you can hear me weekly on Handgun Radio on the Firearms Radio Network.
And you can get more from me at Linktree/Aaron Paulette. That's linktree.ee/Aaron Paulette. All one word.
And thanks to Nate Spencer for our music.
I'm DeLoving, and he's DeGloving. Our injuries are assorted, and so's our podcast. Good night, everybody.
This outro makes me sick to my stomach.
Title your sex tape.